Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm well. How you doing?
Eh,
Yeah, that's about right.
yeah. I don't like inside stuff.
Yeah, I know. Everybody safe on your end?
Oh yeah, they are. I don't have any problems there. Thank God, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Because I definitely hear some stories.
Yeah, yeah.
Out on your end.
Um, yeah, some coworkers have passed away, and
Mm,
um, so
Okay.
it's been kind of hard. Some parents of my friends, yeah.
yeah,
So it's been a little difficult, but you know,
yeah. Hard to concentrate. At one point, a couple of weeks ago, it wasn't that bad, but as time drags
yeah,
on, you know what I mean?
yeah.
It's not. So,
Yeah, it's like we're in a bad movie and we can't figure out when it's going to end.
or what the ending is going to be,
The
right?
ending is going to be.
It's
That's
terrible.
Yeah,
the truth. Yeah.
yeah. Hello, everyone.
Hey,
Good evening.
Trudy.
Hi.
Hey, Ken. Hey, Leslie.
How's it going, Josh?
I'm doing okay. It's been a full day. So I'm doing okay. How about you?
Are your days as long as mine?
Maybe, perhaps. Yeah. 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 You've been working from home all day at a computer, just sort of like staring at that laptop.
All day, all the time. One teleconference after another teleconference after this. It's yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Got outside for a little bit today, which was nice, just to get some fresh air. But yeah, I've been cooped up in a room most of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Trudy, how's that day doing?
He's good. he's good.
Okay.
You know, he's good. The refrigerator's not good, but he's good. Yeah.
I bet.
Yeah.
I bet. Yeah.
Yeah, he's good. You know, how's the kids?
They're good. They're hanging in there. We're pretty lucky in that my parents are nearby, so they've been super helpful. My oldest son Otto loves his granddad, and so they spend a lot of time outside together, and so they've been hanging out.
Yeah.
And then Simon's only a year and a half, but I think my parents have caught on, and so he was able to stay over there last weekend one night, and so we're lucky out here.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
But I can remember hanging out with Casey's older brother Ross, and him having like 4 or 5 kids over on a given Friday or something like that after playing basketball, and we would go after that refrigerator and empty it out in a matter of like an hour, 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
I used to feel so bad because then his mom would go shopping again and again and again. So I can only imagine that odd days probably change things up for you with regard to food consumption.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. We just kind of found DoorDash.
What's that?
So, well, they go get the food for you and they bring it to you.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just like, okay, fine. Because I'm cooking now more than I've ever cooked before.
Yeah.
I'm like, good Lord, is this?
Well, he is like 6. He is like 6'6" and just shy of 200 pounds. So you gotta help him out a little bit.
Oh boy.
So let's see. I'm looking at participants here, and I see Jake on. I see Ken on. Josh, thanks for being here tonight. Leslie's on. Sal is on. Mariona's on. We've got a whole collection of people. Let me see if I can get the whole list. Here it is. Yeah.
Whole collection of people.
Yeah. Good folks. And Jim is on too. Yes, I think that's right. Let's see. Jeanette. Jeanette may not be on yet. Jeanette, are you out there somewhere? And Sarah, are you out there somewhere? Cool. Okay. So I think we've got 6. And so Jim Ellsworth, if you are ready to roll, we have quorum and can begin. We do see some people on mute right now, so they might be grabbing some dinner, getting some food.
You're still all melted up there, Josh.
It's pretty much gone now. We had that snowstorm 2 Mondays ago, and then there were some piles, but I think it's all gone now.
You get that
Hey,
memo?
Josh.
Did you get that memo yet from NICEAD today?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Pretty
Nice.
wild. Pretty wild.
Yeah.
Hey, Josh.
Hey, Jim.
Hey, are you able to unmute my 845 number? I can't unmute it.
I don't think
the
I
host
have
has to
that.
do it.
I don't think I have that power, and I'm not the host. I think on Hangout, I don't know if there is a host here. Unless Chris, you know something that I don't know. And Chris is also on mute.
I'm trying. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. So Chris unmuted himself.
I
just
got a message when I joined that there were so many people that everybody was going on mute.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Are you able to participate via our communication now, or is the phone better for you?
I can. It's rough. I'm on satellite. Hold on.
One option, Jim, would be for you to call me, and I'll just put you on speaker here, which might be funky, but better than nothing.
Okay, should we just get started and I'll try to figure out my technical thing?
Yeah. Worst case scenario,
Josh, you want to start with the
mission moment? Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to. So, good evening, everyone. I hope everyone's doing okay and taking care of themselves and their loved ones, and managing through this. For the mission moment today, I sent to you all a list about 20 minutes ago. And that list is a not completely exhaustive, but fairly comprehensive list of the colleges thus far that our kids have been accepted to. And so if you open that up, I might be able to screen share here too. Maybe I'll get fancy on us. Present now. I think I can do that. Share my screen. And then allow. And I'll just show that off. Can you all see that?
Sure can.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
All right. So,
Yeah, we can.
what you're seeing here is a list of the colleges that kids have accepted to thus far. And so this here is a number of solid SUNYs and CUNYs represented. I guess first of all, you'll notice that 100% of our kids have been accepted into at least one Brooklyn and the percentage of students that end up going to college from Brooklyn or anything like that yet. Well, I'll have that for you. But I wanted to go back to another table that we looked at some time ago, back in August of last year. Can you all see that? Give me a verbal yes if you can see it.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. This is like it's a 4-year graduation rate, and so in order to go to a higher ed institution, you've got to graduate from high school. And so I give this to you so you have a sense of kind of where things are now for us. We've talked about high school graduation rates last meeting and what we hope to do. There have even been some more immediate changes with requirements coming out yesterday, today, and so I'll say more about that later on in the meeting. But if you look at, for example, CD 13 and CD 16, that's where most of our kids are living. You'll see that among all students, the graduation rate from high school is 82% in 13. It's 60% in 16. Among Black students, Black and Brown students in both of those districts, it's 74 and 58. Among students who are eligible for free and reduced price lunch, it's 80 and 60. So this is the percentage of students that graduate from high school. And for those that don't, the options for college are really not there. And so I think for me, this says that we're on to something, and there's some things to be proud of around the percentage of our kids that have been accepted into school thus far, and kind of where we are in comparison to some of the bigger values and stats. Our work is not done here in terms of like kids have been accepted into school, but matriculation is sort of the next move for us. And so the work over the coming couple of months is around financial aid and helping kids and families manage that complex process. It's about helping them make decisions that are best for them given circumstances. It's about onboarding kids this summer and prepping them for a pretty significant transition. And then it's about support in year one. And so those things, if we do those well, I feel really good about our mission of empowering our kids to then go on and do some great things. And so that's the mission moment today. Feel proud of what you all done as a governing board in helping to make this happen. We've got work to do, but there's some things to be proud of in the interim. So that is the update for today. Any comments or questions there? Cool. So we'll move on from the mission moment to I guess, Jim, if you're there, the head of school report. Does that make sense?
I am. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Okay, I'm back. All right, guys, thanks. Yeah, so off you go. Head of school report.
All right, so you guys were able to read that, and so I guess a couple of notes I'll provide in updating and providing some additional context. I think first, just from the intro, as I said, this has been a demanding time for us as we've completely pivoted to a different kind of schooling in a matter of 2 months, in addition to like caring for everyone. And so it's been wild. And at the same time, I think as a small mom and pop school where we're 100 staff, I've got a board that's very much available, invested in the work. We've been able to do some things that I think are good for kids and families, where just being small and being a mom and pop has its advantages. So I feel good about kind of where we are now and being able to make some quick changes in comparison to some of our bigger comparable schools and networks and districts. So that feels good. So I think with that, I want to provide an update on the first area, which is Unity's transition to remote learning, and just highlight a couple of things. First, around safety and strengths, we have had no super serious health and safety issues, but we have had a number of staff members who have either been sick over the past couple of weeks or unfortunately have had family members fall ill and in a couple of cases pass. And so we had a history teacher whose dad passed away yesterday morning. And so this is real right now, very real. Around access and strengths in terms of transitioning to remote learning, I feel like we're way ahead of the curve. We've got 97% of our kids who have what they need, Wi-Fi, laptops, to then engage in the program we're now offering. And so I don't have stats on other schools, but I know that just even based on being a dad and being home and seeing what my son has taken part in with his public school, we're offering a lot more to our kids than the typical school, much more. And that shows in participation.
You're up a few percent on classical.
Oh, sorry. What's that?
You're up a few percent on classical.
All right, good. We're getting after him. Appreciate that. So with regard to participation, I think we've also had strong relative attendance and participation with the range being 93 to 95% over the course of the past 2 weeks. I think, the past week has been rougher than the first week. The first week, I think we were all just kind of joining hands and making this happen and feeling really just powerful and driving forward. I think maybe things have become a bit stale and people are starting to show some fatigue after a big burst in that first week. And so it's going to be nice to have some downtime next week where we transition to something a bit more modified and independent than what we're doing right now. But overall, participation-wise, we're relatively very strong in comparison to what other schools are trying to get together. And maybe that's a result of us being small and being able to maneuver. I think finally, the thing that I think I'm proud of is that we made a decision early on to go with live active online facilitation. And I think that's created communication, interactions that people and kids in particular need, and some structure as well as some accountability. Like we've been able to reach out to families because we're requiring or strongly encouraging live active participation via Zoom and Google Classroom. That has then allowed for us to check in with families and in some cases help create some positive improvements and change. So I think those four things have resulted in us having, given the circumstances, a strong showing in continuing to serve our families and our students. Are there any questions there? I'm going to move us on to just some challenges. I'm going to spend a little more time on the school leader report than I have the past couple of months, just because I think there's a lot here. And I think if we hit on these now, the rest of the meeting should, I think, flow fairly quickly. So on challenges, the one highlight I want to bring out is just competing commitments right now. And so I think we've gone pretty hard on the current, like let's figure out how to do this right and make sure that we're serving families well right now. And so that's put some other things on pause more so than I would like if this were normal circumstances. And so I think things like hiring right now and planning for 2021, those haven't gone. We haven't been able to devote as much time to those over the past couple of weeks in the way that I would wanted to. So I think right now with some downtime coming on next week, we'll double back. There are going to be some leaders that are working some hours over the course of this downtime, what we're calling spring pause. And during that time, we'll be able to catch up on hiring, be able to continue to focus on student recruitment and some planning for 2021. But it is a challenge. That's transition to remote learning. Are there any questions about the transition? We've been communicating somewhat regularly, but are there any specific questions or ideas that people have on this call around the transition?
Just out of curiosity, what are you doing in terms of school day?
It's it varies slightly by school, but typically we've got 4 classes a day running 8 to 1-ish. And then what we've done is, that was the first week, Jake. The second week we ramped things up and we included at our middle school some enrichment. And so kids are taking part in remote PE. They're taking part in remote art and theater and dance. At the high school, we've got tutoring hours in the afternoon, and that's targeted. And so we've got tutoring hours with specific kids for that extra block in the afternoon. I mean, in comparison to my son, who goes to one of the best elementary schools in Brooklyn, maybe in New York City, he's not receiving anything live right now. And so it's just all like, hey, mom, dad, make it happen. Here you go. Here's a worksheet. Here's some work. So I go back to like our decision to go with live remote, and that being a good one in terms of being present for families. And I'll say a little bit more about Zoom in a moment because I think there's an update there that people might wonder about because of what you've heard in the news. I'm going to move on now to the lottery, which we had on the 1st. You can see the bullets here, but a couple of additional points that I'll make. We did have about 30 families tune in to the lottery live on YouTube, which is not something we've experienced before. And so that was cool. Right now, I'm feeling good about our yield prospects. So the number of students who are admitted, who then apply, and who then matriculate in the 6th grade, just based on the team and communication that's gone on over the past year. And I feel like that communication has been stronger than in any other year we've had. And some of that's just through the personnel we have in positions there at the middle school. At the high school, we're also in fairly good form. We're looking at 45-ish 8th graders continuing on to our high school next year. Want to bump it up to 55. And so Kalu, our person kind of running that along with Chris, are having conversations with families as they make choices about options for next year. And so we'd like to have that increase by about 50 to 55. And so I think the prospect of getting there is fairly high. With that, we're looking to enroll close to or just over 100 students in the 9th grade next year. So we've got 270 applicants, about 50 students coming from our 8th grade, let's just say. I feel as if we're going to be able to sort of make that work and don't have any concerns at this point in time. And so I would say we're on target as of now. Yeah, so any questions around recruitment for next year and the lottery we just had this past week? Cool. I'll move us on to the last topic that I wanted to point out here in the leader report. So we had our interview day today. Coming in Friday, I felt really good about things in terms of candidates and setting people up and having teams go about these performance tasks in a fairly rigorous way. Yesterday, I took a beating. It was kind of rough. I had 2 people of those 3 bow out. And this is going to happen sometimes. We began with 30 candidates back in February, narrowed down to 7 with calls, invited 4 in, 1 dropped last week, and then we had 2 drop yesterday. So I was like, oh my. So we had a good day today with this candidate, and so I felt really good about process. I felt good about team. And this candidate is fairly strong, so we'll see where it goes. We've got some more work to do with this one candidate, but I think she had a fairly strong showing, and the team overall felt that way as well. The 2 candidates that dropped yesterday, I've been thinking about, like, why did that happen? What went on? We were pretty heavy. They both had reasons that they described to me in emails yesterday, and both were looking to perhaps stay at their current site in different ways. We also gave them a significant amount of pre-work and wanted to be real with them about the demands of this position. And so the pre-work in prep for the performance tasks on Monday, I gave them on Friday, and then they had over the course of the weekend to get them done. And I suspect that some of this was just due to both the pre-work being fairly significant and rigorous, and then just the demands of what we're kind of struggling with right now. Putting myself in their shoes, it's a lot to kind of dig into. Probably about 5 hours worth of performance work while holding another job, plus just other things going on around you. So I guess in terms of weeding people out, this is doing that. And we had one person come out today and put forth a fairly strong showing. So there's some next steps to take part in with that candidate. There's a follow-up conversation to be had this coming week, and I'm now devising what that'll look like. I think right now the concern is in the event that this person doesn't show to be the right fit right now, we're kind of in a place where there's nothing else sort of in the pipeline. So that concerns me a little bit. It just means having to then devote more time to finding candidates who are strong enough and who we can bring into interview. So that's the latest. One strong candidate today, and we continue that candidate. I'll take questions or ideas or concerns coming from the board. And Josh, we didn't get the debrief today, but you were able to take part in one of the sessions. I thank you for that. If you have any insights on process today or process thus far, would love to hear those too.
Yeah, I'll just chime in. I think the day was very rigorous. Josh did a really nice job teeing things up. We put the candidate through a series of exercises that are very emblematic of the co-principal role at the high school. We had great turnout in terms of participation from team members at Unity Prep High, which was great. I think we put the candidate through a real test. And she did on the large majority of the tasks that she did well. There's certainly some follow-up to do for sure, but she's a solid candidate. I would definitely say she's a solid candidate. And our next step, Josh and I will discuss is, what do we do from here? Do we want to try to source additional candidates? What are the pros and cons from that? But overall, it was a really a positive day. From my perspective.
All right. So a few last updates, miscellaneous updates. First, and you may have seen these in the news, but there will be no middle school testing this year. And so no exams in math or ELA. That came out last week, if you didn't see that news. As of today, or yesterday, I'm losing track of days here, today, there will be no Regents testing in June. And so if kids essentially pass the courses they take, they'll be exempt from the Regents exams this spring. There are a few technicalities there, but that generally is the gist. Ken or if Sarah's on, do you want to add to that at all with regard to just that update?
I think I may have misread this, I only read it briefly, but I think they're also allowed to fail the course they're currently enrolled in now, which would have terminated in a Regents exam. If they take that course in the summer and still the exam is not offered, they still will get to graduate and they'll get that credit for that course. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's my understanding too. Mm-hmm.
So they really made it, kind of opened up that valve for people to graduate, which is good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In addition to that, there's been an extension in New York State of school closures through the 29th of April. And so not only 9 additional days, but I suspect we'll hear more news about that in the coming weeks. But we'll follow suit there. And we'll continue with the remote program that we've been using the past 2 weeks on Monday, the 20th on through the 29th, and then we'll see from there. The last update is you may have seen some news about Zoom and just some security issues. And so we are using Zoom at the school. And I think we've got some ramped up security over the past week, and we haven't had issues with security thus far. But when having a class, for example, and a teacher's hosting that class, a teacher needs to manually admit anyone who is to take part in the class. And so a student can't enter or someone can't enter the class without that. In addition to that, one can't enter any Zoom meetings or even have the possibility of entering those meetings with Unity unless they have the Unity Prep username. And so, for example, Josh took part in our Zoom calls today. We had to give him a temporary username in order to do that. And so I think those securities right now have allowed for us to continue without having any large concerns about security breaches. And then it also, I think most importantly, allows for us to continue to offer live instruction remotely.
Josh, the other thing you can do is you can add passwords.
Yep, that's right.
You may not need to, but that's another feature that we've seen used.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, we haven't gone that route too, but it would be the next option up. So any questions on those updates? A lot there. All right, back to you, Jim.
Okay, Okay, data dashboard.
Yeah, just two very quick updates there, team. One is just that there shouldn't be an update in Table 11 under development. No updates there from the past month. It's still in green though, so a correction. And then with Table 12 for family participation in conferences, we held conferences in the middle school just before schools were closed temporarily. And so we actually had remote conferences on that Friday. And that was a judgment call on leadership's part just before schools were closed. And so attendance wise, we met our goal of 3/4 of our families taking part in conferences either on Thursday or Friday. So I think that was positive news. And then we're just rescheduling our high school conferences till late April. And so that those have not taken place yet. I do like the timing of those conferences, though, in that we'll have some more information about the impact of not having Regents exams and the impact of courses and course grades for all of our students. And then we'll be able to meet with families on college stuff during that time, too. So I think it'll be a good touch point for us. That's all that I have for the dashboard. Unless there are questions about other pieces of information there, I'm happy to engage.
Okay, should we move on to strategic planning?
Yeah, sort of finally, with my 15 minutes of fame here with the strategic planning, I think like most organizations, you guys are probably feeling this way too. Much of our time or all of our time has been devoted to the short term and into responding to what has been unanticipated. So strategically, that's where we've devoted most of our energies. I think, as I said, we'll have some downtime over the coming week to catch up on some things that are more strategic, like our planning for the coming year and hiring for the coming year and some of the staffing there. I think one of the other layers to consider for next year with a strategic plan is just the possibility of this remote learning stuff being extended or perhaps reoccurring. And so with planning for the coming year, I think that's just something we also have to consider and begin looking hard at. And so, for example, having a laptop and Wi-Fi access for every one of our students going into the year as a precautionary measure, just as good practice, is something that we'll work to do and have in place. As I said earlier, I do think that we're in relatively very solid standing with being able to continue to serve families and kids better than a lot of our peer schools under the circumstances. And so we would be able to take much of what we've developed and created over the past 2 weeks and apply it to next year and make it better. So that would be the new element to thinking about strategic planning in the longer term. Any insights there coming from members of the board?
Well, is anybody hearing anything about funding levels for next year? Have you heard anything from the state or, obviously the state sales taxes are going to be way down. We should expect something not good. Has anybody heard anything concrete or rumors?
Leslie, during Friday's call,
Yep.
you had some updates. You want to say a bit here?
Yep. I did hear some updates. What I'm hearing is that possibly the per pupil rate or the tuition rate that is being received is going to be lower. So currently what we're hearing $16,112 compared to $16,150 of which we're receiving for this year. What they're also giving is through Title I. They're giving like an emergency Title I fund in addition to your normal Title I. We're not sure what the of how you're going to be able to use that money yet. If you're going to have to use it in line with title or in line with something else, we're not sure of that yet. But that's going to be based on $150 per student. And that's something that I found out today.
Mm-hmm.
But What we may not be receiving this year is that normally there's this one-time supplement that we get from the Senate. That we receive in April. We have not heard that we're definitely not going to receive it, but we're hearing that there's a chance that we may not.
So
Other than that, I haven't heard anything else.
So I would move forward at this point in time. It's April. Typically, we've got kind of a draft of a budget assembled by the May meeting with the AFC to look things over, and then to present in draft form to the board, to then make tweaks over the course of May and then have approved in June. I guess the move would be to, as we've done in the past, create a couple of scenarios where we've got, the worst case scenario, perhaps one up from that. And I guess the good news is that we worked on a 5-year budget last year. And so we've got a plan built out where I believe we were fairly conservative with our assumptions on increases in per pupil revenues, but there was some increase. So we'll have to make adjustments to that in both the budget for 2021 and for what would be our pro forma multi-year budget. Does that seem right to folks, or would anyone else add anything with regard to process and strategy this month moving into next month?
Well, yeah, I agree that we've always tended toward the conservative, but I'm nervous we weren't conservative enough. So I think we just need to keep our, finger on the pulse here. It doesn't look good for New York in terms of tax revenues, and I'm not sure that the powers that be in Albany are going to be, as they go down their hierarchy of things they want to fund, I don't know where we're going to fall out. So I think we just need to be extra careful. And all of us on this call are seeing it, doing it with our companies, et cetera, on our expenses and being prepared for something more dramatic than, a 5% decrease in the reimbursement rate. If we're wrong, we're wrong. But I think that's where we need to be.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question for Leslie, and I'm sorry I missed the AFC on Friday, but how much of this is is kind of hardwired in the state budget versus decided outside of that? Because the budget's done, right?
Nope. Leslie, are you still there?
Leslie, you're on mute, I think.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm off mute now. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
How much of this is, I think a lot of it has to do with the state budget, unfortunately, which is why I think Governor Cuomo came out and said that we're going to see less because education is the number 2 spending of the state budget.
But didn't they pass the budget? I don't know. I don't follow New York State politics super closely, but isn't it done?
I didn't hear that it was passed. I heard it was completed. I don't know if it was passed.
The legislature passed it and then they just disappeared. So I thought it was done.
Okay. I don't.
Yeah, they passed it a couple of days ago. So I don't know. It would be worth for somebody who has time, which unfortunately is not me at the moment, but to just check to see whether anybody's put out a publication about what's in the budget, because I think we should have a lot of these answers. And I take everybody's point that things could get worse and budgets could get amended, but that's not super, super likely. So we should have a decent baseline of what to expect.
Yeah.
Well, I know right now to expect the $16,112 in per pupil.
Okay.
That was communicated to us. What we're unsure about is all of the additional funds that they give us and some of the supplemental dollars. And I think it'd be on the safe side to probably not include them in the budget going forward, just in case it doesn't come through.
Okay, I agree with that.
So I can send around a summary of the budget, but I think the somewhat exceptional part about the budget is that it gave Cuomo wide discretion to revisit during the course of the year.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So one of the things
we did here, Marion, is that they're going to look at the per pupil tuition rate every quarter. So let's say for this quarter, and probably when we do the budget, or not this quarter, the first quarter of the new school year. And when we do the budget, we'll use the 16,112. But that doesn't mean that as we move into like December by the end of the year or going through for the rest of the budget, that they won't make a change to that tuition rate. They did say that.
Okay. All right. That's concerning.
Yeah. But I'm thinking positive. I'm thinking that it's going to move in the upward trajectory, not necessarily the downward trajectory. Maybe that's my rose-colored glasses.
Yeah, this is gonna get worse before it gets better.
So I think this came out of our discussion about strategic planning. Jim, I think we can move into the committee reports.
Yeah, let's go to ESC. Yeah.
So, Leslie, your time to shine once again. Here we go.
3 minutes. Of course, we met with the finance committee on Friday, so they're pretty much up to date with the financials that I'm going to go over today. Roughly, we're expecting for the rest of the year to have a net income of $246,978 versus a budget of $102,886, which is over budget by $144,092. This isn't much of a change from last month. We pretty much looked at where we were and kept everything, assuming that we're going to go into for the rest of the year the way we were last month. However, it doesn't take into account some of the things like maybe the additional computers that might have been purchased that, of course, we're going to look to capitalize, any type of additional funding for any type of online instruction, and we'll factor that in next month. But on the positive side for revenue, revenue showed very little change. We're expected to be $187,915 over budget. The main change there was additional gym revenue for $4,235. And we also are factoring in $70,000 of a restricted contribution that's coming from FOMB. However, even though we're adding that $70,000 to our revenue, the expectation is that that additional $70,000 would be used for PD and for some athletic expenses. Noting that we're now in a different type of school year, there's a chance that we will not use all of that $70,000 for this year because the teachers will not be on site and some of the athletic activities won't take place. Any questions on revenue before I move into expenses?
So have we already transferred the $75,000?
No, we have not transferred the $75,000. Not on a cash basis. We have not.
Shouldn't we transfer a lower amount if the amounts that it was going to be supposed to fund aren't going to get spent because we have no athletic programs this spring?
Yeah, this actually was discussed on Friday. Mario and Jim, do you want to sort of describe what we came to?
I'm sorry, was that for me?
Yeah, we're talking now about transfer of restricted funds and how we treat that.
My thought was that don't transfer until you spend the money. Obviously, we're not doing anything in the gym, and if that money was supposed to be for athletics, don't send the money across. If you cut a check to the school for something that qualifies for these, restricted funds, by all means, send the money across to cover it, but do not send lump sums across for things that may or may not happen just because we're so uncertain right now. That was my view. If anybody has another...
Yeah, that was where my question was headed. So I think that's fine.
Yep.
I guess in addition to that, or Leslie, do you want to continue, or is that?
If we're finished with expenses, with revenue, I was going to move on to expenses.
Go for it.
Okay. So on an expense basis, we're projected to be $43,824 over budget. And the main reason for that is pretty much what we've seen in the transfer of the expenses that we were going to use of that $70,000. So where there were some savings, it's offset by the additional expenses of that $70,000. So this amount may be a little bit misleading because based on our previous conversation, if those expenses are not used, then of course we're not going to have those expenses going forward. Other than that, there wasn't really too much of a change in the expenses from last month. We're still showing that we're lower in compensation. The insurance fees were still up by $10,000 or roughly. Marion, I shared with you my analysis on that. Professional services, we're still offset with a higher increase, and that's for we're lower on substitute services. I'm sorry, but there was an approved increase to the athletic expense that's showing up in the professional services, and of course we have the additional $40,000 in the professional development. So on a year-end basis, we're ending the year on a positive note of $144,000 over budget.
And so in addition to talking about the budget as of the end of February and how we treat some of these restricted contributions, and then we also talked about per pupil next year and what that might look like, which we've now discussed here in this meeting. Jim also brought up some ideas around SBA loans. And so, Jim, do you want to say a few words about that, just so everyone's in the loop?
Yeah, so the SBA has a program. It's called the Payroll Protection 3Ps. I can't remember all of them, but anyway, basically it started on Friday. Most of the banks, B of A came out first with their online application. I just filled one out for one of my companies. It takes about 10 minutes. Basically, you get loan proceeds are 2.5 times your average monthly payroll. Completely forgiven if you maintain that payroll over the course of a year. You make payments over the course of that year. I forget the interest rate, like 1.5%, something like that. And then it's completely forgiven if you didn't lay a bunch of people off, basically. And a lot of this is in flux, but that's the gist of it. It can be used toward payroll, rent, one other thing, can't remember. Anyway, so I put Josh in touch with a friend of mine who's the biggest SBA lender in the U.S. They're backlogged with their current clients, but offered to put the school to the front of the line of the Friends and Family program. Josh, I think, we discussed it's a no-brainer. You do it. You have no idea how it's going to play out. I don't know. What is our monthly payroll roughly?
Hold on one second. I might be able to get that for you.
While you're looking that up, Jim, do you know that charters are eligible, number one?
The initial feedback is yes. Yeah.
Okay. Do we know that if your revenues don't go down at all, you're still eligible?
If your revenues do not go down, yeah, it's not revenue based at all. There's no revenue. Yeah.
All right. And okay, well then, yeah, then I guess that makes sense. The one thing I'll say is that you can't use it. I mean, it's probably not an issue, but you need to be very careful in terms of how you apply the funds and making sure they only go to payroll, and there's some conditions, including it can't be applied to any salaries over $100,000, and there's a bunch of bells and whistles, and we at the firm, not me specifically, but are advising some people pro bono on some of these things. So if I can figure out who's doing it, and Josh, if you put in an application, we should put you in touch with whoever at our shop is following these things too, to make sure you don't, because the key is going to be you want this to, in the end, be forgiven and not have to be repaid. That's the whole point.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And so that makes sense. Chris is working with, I put him in touch with Jim's contact today. So they'll be working on it. I think the application is not all that demanding, so we hope to have something tomorrow.
Yeah, the application, literally, it's a couple clicks on the website. They're all doing it on the web. You need your last, they say, 4 quarters 941 forms. I don't know if you guys have a different one, but for C Corp, which we have, it's a 941, your payroll. Then you need some sort of like a PDF report of your average payroll. We just took our annual salaries for the year divided by 12 with the benefits. and submitted that. And literally just before I got on this phone, the bank called me back 2 minutes after hitting the send button and said, okay, you got everything. We're good to go. So it's not complicated. I think if you use the money the right way, I would use this as a rainy day fund, just leave it on the side. If we never touch it, so be it. We can, I think it's absolutely no brainer that you at least go for it and see if we can get it.
Monthly payroll is about $640 a month.
Oh, well, so this is a real number. Yeah.
Yeah, that's compensation only. With payroll taxes and benefits, it could be another 130.
You're probably almost you're about $2 million loan there, forgiven. So it's something you should try for.
So Jim, sorry, is that basically just free money as long as we don't fire anybody?
One is actually S&C is helping my wife out with a few of these with their companies. That's the direction we're getting, is be very careful to maintain your payroll. Don't go, what they don't want you doing is making a dividend with this stuff and doing a stock buyback and all that sort of nonsense, right? So, but they haven't, dollars are fungible, right? So you can't track this money and this money paid payroll and other money. It's not like that, but it is very much, we would rather, I think the theory is we'd rather have you, the employers, maintain these people, even if they're not absolutely doing everything they were doing 2-3 weeks ago, rather than put them on welfare and then we got to pay them. It's the same math either way. Keep them on your payroll, and that seems to be the intent.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's and I just saw it's a $250 billion program. Senate is putting to the floor, I think tomorrow, to double it to 500. It's been huge demand for this thing.
Yeah, it's 350 and it's gonna get up to 600, I think. But I'm still, as you described the goals of the program, it doesn't seem like we fit in that we get 100%. I mean, not 100%, but almost 100% of our revenues from the state, and the state has continued to pay us, and this is really not affecting us very much. So by all means apply, but let's make sure that we're eligible, which we need to certify on the form.
Mm-hmm.
And let's also make sure that if there's any doubt as to whether we're applicable, as Jim said, we're eligible, as Jim said, we put the money someplace so that if we have to repay it, we're able to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Great. So that's the summary of the AFC call.
Yep.
Next up would be DFC, and I guess I can begin. I think we updates what we discussed on Thursday include just an updated draft term sheet to David Dweck, which we did, and so now that's in his hands, and he'll provide some comments. Obviously, all development is on hold right now with activities and initiatives. We did apply for a grant. The school applied for a $30,000 grant with the New York City Charter Center last week. We were supposed to hear back on Monday about the results of that, and they sent an email out and said, we need some more time to think about how to divvy up this funding. And so that would go toward our tech needs and pay for the expanded needs that we've come to as a result of being remote. So we'll hear back about that soon. Jake, anything else you want to report out with regard to DFC?
Small note, we terminated our lease at WeWork.
Yeah.
And the real estate tax exemption application continues to move forward.
One giant step at a time. We're getting there. Yeah. So I think with the next committee meeting, just in kind of sharing out talking points there with the ECPC on Monday, I think what was mainly discussed is just our communication with families over the past 3 weeks, and how overall that's been strong, and families have been grateful about the frequent correspondence. I've shared with you guys from time to time what that looks like. on the Daily with the Scoop. Obviously, there's a lot of other conversations that happen by phone with families who have specific needs. But I think overall, communication has been good, and so that came up. I think with regard to events that are community related, those are on hold right now. There have been volunteers that have come forward and said, hey, we'd like to sort of mentor and provide something to your students, young professionals, associate board members who are at home right now and may have some more time to provide remote help. For us, just about kind of getting the machinery up and getting our own stuff up and running before then kind of expanding out to that. So that's something I'd like to explore when we come back from this spring pause. So those were the three main areas of discussion during that call. Trudy and Sal, would you add anything?
No, that's about right.
Yep.
Cool. And so then finally with the SLC, we've reviewed most of what was discussed during that that call. I think we also discussed just the impact of not having middle school testing at the time. And now with this new piece of not having regents, obviously that just changes up academic goals and kind of what we're working toward this year. And so there was some conversation there, but nothing that I think needs to go to the full board in this meeting. Jim, Ken, does that seem right to you? Anything else that's worth discussion with the full board?
No, I was wondering if you have an initial take on how this relaxation of the graduation standards might affect our lead cohort. Do you have any sense of that yet, or is it too early for that?
Yeah, I think there will be more. We had 3 students. So with the Regents exams, I think we had 2 or 3 students who were who needed Regents exams in June in order to then graduate. So I think we have 1 student who needed the Algebra 1 exam. She's now exempt from that. She's passed the course, so she's fine. And so we'll probably have an easier time with a few of these students graduating in June. I think what I foresee happening is other schools will also have relatively high graduation rates this year. This was our first year to kind of come out and show the world. So I was excited to do that. Still excited to celebrate our kids' accomplishments and our school's accomplishments, but it's going to look different from an authorizer's perspective, for example, or perhaps others. So where I am right now in my thinking is we opened up with this mission moment talking about colleges and where kids are going off to. And so I still feel really good about where we are now there. And that might be one way of distinguishing ourselves from other peer schools. Like, hey, this is what our kids are up to in the fall of 2020 after graduating from our school. And this is impressive.
You can add on if you get some nice actual matriculation rates.
Yeah.
That's something that, a lot of folks can boast a big number of acceptances, but getting the kids actually to the schools and sitting in a chair is that drops off precipitously.
Yep. So thus far, we've got 2 really good people working with about 80 kids. So the ratio is, I think, fairly solid in comparison to a lot of schools. So there's good attention going to our families and kids. And then I think if you look at that list of colleges, they've been particular, our counselors, in making sure that kids are veering away from predatory colleges or colleges that might not serve them well in that first year. So those are 2 good advantages I think we have now, but we've got work to do.
And they're really good. I'm talking on a parent's behalf. They're really good. They're really good.
Maybe the only other things that came up just from an authorizer perspective is we did submit a continuity plan of learning. That was 2 weeks ago. And that just outlined essentially what we discussed during the executive committee meeting back in March 19th. And so we had to describe what it is we're doing to continue with instruction remotely over the time in which schools are not in session physically, how we're reaching out to families, how we're ensuring access to learning, how we're working with special populations. And so that was turned in. I did speak with Paulo, our liaison with state, just after that, just a check-in courtesy call. And I think we've got kind of impressive numbers in comparison to some of the other schools out there with regard to attendance and access and things. So all felt right there. Paolo did say that we'd have weekly check-ins moving forward just to kind of make sure that we're doing okay and doing right. So I look forward to that. I think they're doing that with everyone. And so, yeah, that was the communication with state. Over the past 2 weeks, there have been a series of webinars that have gone on just to information share as new announcements come forward. So I think overall, I feel like we're well informed and in a good position from an authorizing standpoint. All right. Jim, I think we can move on. I don't know if Ram's on, so there's no associate board updates today. We can move on to approval items.
Okay, so first item for approval is the minutes from the prior March 10 meeting. Are there any questions, edits, etc.? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. The next one, the executive committee minutes. Josh, I just had one nit. It looks like table in the appendix. I don't have it open in front of me. The exhibit. I got it now. Okay. The first table, there's a please add bullet. We probably either add something or just delete that in the prior sentence.
Yep.
Yeah. That's the only comment I had. Anybody else have any comments to that meeting?
Noted.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Thank you. Okay. A comment.
Yeah, I was expecting maybe we're streaming live on YouTube right now. I thought we might have some fans taking part in the call too, but I think it's just us tonight.
That's why you're so well behaved. Actually, I was just thinking about this loan. Maybe there's some small group, and maybe it's some combination of Leslie, myself, and who did you appoint on the school side? Chris, was it?
Yep.
Who could huddle up in the morning to get it done. I know what information's needed. It's not a lot. It didn't take me any time to put it together. But the two banks, I've worked with two banks now, and JP will be my third tomorrow for my portfolio companies, and they're saying get it in yesterday. You got to move quick.
Yeah, Jim, I think I want to talk to people here legally because people are concerned about the reputational issues here. I just want to make sure that there's not going to be backlash here, because given that we're almost exclusively state funded and our funding hasn't dried up, I think I would like some sense that people are generally taking the view that charters are eligible, and that's what the city charter center is doing, because otherwise I'm worried that we're going to get in the crosshairs of the state and the federal government and everybody else if we take money that's not really meant for us.
It's a great idea. I mean, the two banks I've worked with so far have said definitely they are, but they have an incentive to generate the loan, right? So it would be great to have another opinion on that matter.
Okay, all right.
Marion, quick question there. So I received information and kind of promotion on these loans from Michelle Kane.
Okay.
I would think she would know. So would it make sense to reach out to her for greater guidance here?
That's fine. And I think, and if the rationale is, you want schools to not lay people off, then I guess that's equally applicable for you guys, because you could have decided to let your teachers go. So it may be completely fine. It's just giving me pause, because you're not like all these businesses out there whose revenues have gone to zero in the past month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's all.
I'm with you. So in terms of like course of action here, should there be a call set up tomorrow with Jim? I can see if we can get Michelle Kane on, Leslie and Chris, and would that suffice in terms of like an authority on whether this makes sense, or would you want to reach out to folks within the firm?
No, I've already reached out to folks within the firm. I've already asked who at the firm was advising on this, because I'd like to bounce this off of somebody. So I'll see what answer I get, but I'm happy to get on the phone tomorrow. And again, I'm not trying to deprive you guys of this if everybody else is doing it, and if it's a generally accepted conclusion that charters are eligible, by all means go for it.
Yeah.
I just, now that I think about it, do we need a board approval to take out this loan, which may require repayment?
Yes.
How do we want
we do, and we should either approve now, or we should reconvene. Just up to whatever the group wants to approve and delegate to a group, or reconvene later.
How do people feel? I mean, who would be that group first? And can everybody reconvene tomorrow if we need to do that? Second.
I think it's fine if the board wants to conditionally approve and saying subject to everybody being satisfied. And we can circulate stuff by email too.
That's okay with me.
So it's a conditional approval subject to email something around tomorrow to get, email approval?
Yeah, you want to confirm that the rest of the people reconvening tomorrow haven't concluded that, or have concluded that it's the right thing to do.
Okay.
Should we have like 3 board members take part in that? Would that make sense, or 2, or?
I think let's send it time and as many as can join.
Okay. Okay.
So maybe, Josh, there are 2 things that happen. Maybe Leslie, Chris, and I hop on a call in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know availability, but
does 9:30 work for you?
Yeah, 9:30 is fine.
Leslie's
and you.
I'm looking at my calendar. 9:30?
Yep.
No, I have a meeting at 9:30 from 9:30 to 10. 9 o'clock would work.
Okay, that's fine. If that works for Jim.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, also I'll either send an invite or I'll Chris do it in the morning. But 9 o'clock works for him. We'll move our meeting.
Okay, then just clear. Are we going to vote on something right now?
We should if we don't want to reconvene the whole board.
Okay, so Mario, thoughts on what that vote is?
Yeah, that would be authorizing the school to apply for a PPP loan. Subject to, at a minimum, you, Jim, me, and whoever else want to volunteer after discussing with Michelle and whoever we feel is necessary, conclude that the school should.
Okay.
That works for me. I'd feel better if someone else, 2, 3, maybe another board member, maybe another one as well, just so, not as a CYA, just to make sure we have some sort of consensus here. If anybody wants to volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Who else do I see?
To the extent we do it before 7, I can join.
Before 7 p.m. tomorrow?
Yeah.
Yeah. And if it's anything like a close call, I think we'll send an email to the board and make sure people understand what the decision is.
Yep.
Okay, Josh, you want to handle sending those invites out? First of all, who is secretary on this, drafting some version of what Marion just said? Do we have that?
I've got some fresh. I've got notes down now. I'll hand them off to Chris.
Okay, great. So we'll the approval right now is move forward with the application for a PPP loan. subject to an approval tomorrow, tomorrow or possibly later of Marion, Jim, Jake, and I don't know if Josh is part of that vote. Is that?
Nope, I'm not.
Is that it?
Yeah, it's just Jim, Marion, and Jake.
Okay, got it. And then, if there's any material issues that come out of the application process, we'll reconvene the board.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Okay, great. All in favor?
Aye.
Hey,
Thanks. All right,
Yeah.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, everybody. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
everyone. Have a good night.
Good night.
Happy week. Bye bye.
Thank you.
thank you.
Bye bye.